Hello and welcome to another timeless classic of Greek mythology. Today's story is going to be about Psyche. So Psyche was this very, very attractive woman. Everyone loved her. She was so beautiful that she rivaled even Aphrodite, the goddess of love and beauty. Some even said that she was more beautiful than Aphrodite. Now, this made Aphrodite jealous. She was the goddess of beauty after all. She looked different to every single person based on their own biases of what is attractive. She was the pinnacle of beauty, and thus she was angry to be compared to a mortal. But Psyche didn't like this kind of attention. Not only was everyone jealous of her, especially her two sisters, but she couldn't find a suitor. Everyone was just so entranced by her beauty that she couldn't make meaningful connections. She was too beautiful. People would just stare at her. So Aphrodite, being jealous, sent Eros, her son, to make her fall in love with an ugly monster, a horrific beast. While carrying out the task, he slipped and he fell and accidentally hit himself with the arrow. And now he was in love with Psyche instead of some ugly monster. In the meanwhile, because she couldn't find a real suitor, her parents went to Delphi. And when they asked the oracle what was going to happen, the oracle said,
"Despair, king. Your daughter will marry a beast even the gods fear. Dress her in funeral clothes and take her to the tallest rock spire in the kingdom. There she shall meet her doom."
This was not an ideal situation to be in. However, Psyche knew that any attempt to dodge fate would be futile, and thus, following the instructions of the divine, went to the rock, dressed in funeral garbs, and in a tearful farewell, she jumped off. But she did not die. Zephyrus, the god of the west wind, had carried her away and drugged her to make her sleep. When she had awoken, she was in a beautiful palace. This palace was that of Eros. You see, the beast that the gods were so fearful of was Eros. What made him an ugly monster was not his looks, but rather his keen ability to manipulate gods and men. You know what they say, never judge a book by its cover. So Psyche was in this beautiful palace, married to Eros, but she didn't know that. Eros had wanted to maintain anonymity, perhaps due to self-consciousness, or maybe the fact that he didn't want her to love him just because he was a god. He hid his face and was invisible to her. They only met when it was dark. Over the days and weeks, they grew close. They fell in love, and eventually Psyche was pregnant. But one day, she was bored. With the permission of Eros, she invited over her jealous sisters. He recognized that they were jealous and didn't want anything to happen. And in fact, he explicitly told her, "Don't let them tell you to look at me." The sisters, wanting access to the riches of the palace, asked her to kill him, because if he couldn't show what he looked like, clearly he must have been a monster. Psyche believed her sisters, and was worried that maybe in fact she was in love with a monster. So, when he was sleeping the next night, she got a candle and a knife, prepared to kill him. And when the candlelight hit his face, she was shocked. Holy guacamole, it's Cupid. He's so hot. Wow. She was so surprised, taken aback, that she spilled candle wax on him. This woke him up, and everything began to fall apart. Cupid left and fled to his mother Aphrodite, who was not happy. The palace disappeared, and Psyche was left alone in a field. Psyche made her way back to her sisters and told them what had happened. They told her that that was such a sad situation and that they felt so sorry for her. But this was all part of their master plan. They were not sad. They wanted the bountiful riches themselves. So they made their way back to the cliff and hurled themselves off of it, knowing that Zephyrus would carry them to Eros. Except Zephyrus did not do that and simply ignored them, allowing them to fall to their deaths. Psyche had a good heart, and despite her sister's malice, this made her even more sad. Demeter was watching this situation unfold, and told Psyche to beg Aphrodite and that she could make things right. So Psyche went to Aphrodite and begged for forgiveness. Aphrodite listened, and after careful consideration, got some of her servants, Worry and Sadness, lol, and they whipped, beat, mocked, and tortured Psyche. You know, Aphrodite is a lot like the American government. They chauvinistically proclaim a moral superiority, while in the background, sadistically abusing those less fortunate with their godlike powers. However, unlike the American government, perhaps due to her lack of technology, Aphrodite grew tired and bored, and allowed Psyche and Eros to get back together and marry. Nah, I'm just kidding. She just wanted to terrorize her in a different way. So what she did was she went to Psyche and told her that she would consider forgiveness on the condition that Psyche would sort all of these grains before evening. But fortunately, Psyche was a bit of a Disney princess. An ant was watching, and the ant decided to call his friends over, and they all helped out, using their immense numbers and strength to help out Psyche. Aphrodite came back, expecting to see Psyche frantically on her knees, trying to put the toothpaste back in the tube, really shoveling the grains back into their boxes. So when she saw Psyche sitting calmly, she was not happy. Psyche's next task was to go and shear some violent golden rams and bring back their wool. Naturally, Psyche did not want to do this, since if she did, she would be cooked. In fact, Psyche tried to drown herself, but the god of that river was not having it. He told her that she was way too sad and did not want her to pollute his holy waters with her pitiable death, and he gave her some advice. He told her to wait until the temperature was cooler. So she waited for night, and the rams liked the cold, I guess, so they didn't murder her. At this point, Aphrodite was a little conflicted. She was really mad that Psyche kept succeeding, but at the same time, she could get a lot of stuff out of this. Psyche's next task was to go and get some sticky water from the river Styx in a crystal cup. When she got there, literally all the way to hell, Psyche was about to give up, because she would have had to climb a really gnarly cliff, like a real V10 or whatever. But fortunately for Psyche, another god was watching, Zeus, and he sent an eagle to go help her. Now the eagle didn't have any special rock climbing abilities, but eagles can fly, so it was not difficult for the eagle to just simply fly up to the water and then get it for her. Aphrodite was not satisfied because she felt like Psyche got way too much help, which genuinely was not fair because, what was she expecting? For Psyche to just die? Oh, well, yeah, she kind of was. Anyways, so her fourth task was to go back to the underworld and put some of Persephone's beauty in a golden box. Maybe her skincare routine? I'm not entirely sure how you would put an abstract concept into a box. Psyche, naturally, was about to kill herself again, and not because she was trying to get a shortcut to the underworld. Now, in the days before a suicide hotline, you had, different things that talked to you, such as the fucking tower that she was trying to leap off of. Let me repeat that. The fucking tower started to speak to her. She must have been on some serious drugs. Has that ever happened to any of you guys? Let me know in the comments if a fucking building has ever spoken to you. This tower gave her some really good advice. First, it told her to go to Sparta for the passage to hell, which I feel like she would have already known because she already got water from the river Styx, but it doesn't hurt. The second piece of advice was to bring 2 barley cakes baked in sweet wine. Then the tower told her that she would meet a lame ass that was carrying a bunch of logs who's being ridden by a lame person. So to translate that into English and away from slurs, that means that she would find a disabled donkey that's carrying a bunch of logs who's being ridden by a disabled person. So anyways, that person would ask her to help him out, but she had to ignore him. Then she was instructed that she would find Charon and have to give him one of the coins that she's hidden in her mouth and make sure that he takes it himself. Also, she was told to not help up the corpses from the river who need help, and the invisible hand of the market will sort them out. Next, she had to ignore the women who needed help with their weaving. Then she had to give one of her cakes to Cerberus, and only Cerberus. After that, she would find herself in the Palace of Hades, and she had to not accept Persephone's hospitality, so she would have to sit on the ground instead of the nice chair and eat the sawdust-infused bread instead of the good stuff so that she wouldn't be trapped there forever. Then she would have to ask Persephone for the stuff, plead her case and all that, and then on the way out, give the dog the other cake. Then once she made it back to Charon, she would have to give Charon the other coin, then retrace her steps and get back. And lastly, point of advice, do not open the box. So Psyche does all this. She went to Sparta with her cakes and coins. She ignored the donkey and gave a coin to Charon. Ignored the Brochies, ignored the women, gave a cake to Cerberus, sat on the ground, ate the crumbs, let Persephone fill the box out of sight, gave Cerberus the other cake, gave Charon the other coin, retraced her steps, and opened the fucking box. No! She was so close. She got too curious and wanted to be even hotter for her husband. Maybe she was worried about postpartum depression or something? Like she would be ugly after her pregnancy? I've heard that's a common fear. But anyways, this was not a good idea. Persephone did not fill the box with her skincare routine. She'd actually basically farted in it instead. And this one was real potent, and it knocked Psyche out cold. So why would Persephone do this? Well, you see, Persephone and Aphrodite were not homies. We're gonna need a lock-in chat. This is gonna be a long tangent. There once was this guy called Adonis. He was the son of Mira, who had been cursed by Aphrodite to love her dad, after Mira's mom bragged that Mira was hotter than any goddess. Mira told her nurse in confidence, who for some reason was on her side about this whole thing. During a feast for Demeter, the nurse found King Daddy drunk, and told him there was a girl that wanted to have sex with him. To keep it short, Mira got pregnant, and when her father, Cinyras, figured out, he wanted to kill her with a sword. But fortunately, Mira was turned into a tree. But she still gave birth to her kid via a tree hole or something, and thus Adonis was born. Aphrodite found the baby, and took him to be fostered by Persephone, and then returned when he was all grown up, and was like, wow, this guy is cute. Problem was, Persephone also thought that Adonis was hot, and wanted to keep him. This led to some bickering until Zeus got involved, and was like, okay, you will split him. Now he didn't do it entirely like King Solomon. It was split so that 1/3 of the year, Persephone got him. For another third, Aphrodite would get him. And for the other third, he could choose, wherein he bottomed for Dionysus, Apollo, and Hercules. But eventually, he decided to stay with Aphrodite. Once, Hera commanded Aphrodite to make Adonis fall in love with a virgin girl named Aranoma, who Artemis and Athena really liked. This was because Hera got pissed that Aphrodite had tried to make Zeus fall in love with Aranoma because she was jealous that Aranoma liked Artemis and Athena and wanted Aranoma to lose her virginity. So Aphrodite made Adonis go invisible so that he could rape Aranoma instead. Zeus got pissed because he wanted to be the one to rape her, so Adonis fled to Mount Cassius. However, Hermes and Ares, who was disguised as a boar, lured him out of hiding, allowing Zeus to thunderbolt him. Grateful that Aphrodite actually did what she asked, Hera petitioned Zeus to bring Adonis back to life. So everything got sorted. By the way, while all this was going on, Artemis had turned Aranoma into a peacock, but turned her back into a human so that she could give birth to Adonis' son, Talius. Anyways, one day, Adonis was out hunting, and got murked by a boar and bled out in Aphrodite's arms, who despite being a goddess, couldn't save him somehow. However, she did make anemone flowers grow wherever his blood fell, and also turned his blood into roses. We don't know who sent this boar though, and we have a mystery on our hands, gang. Suspect A, Ares. Motive, jealousy. Ares was Aphrodite's main lover, and could have been mad that he was getting cucked. Ares is also known to quite frequently turn into boars, and although they may be indistinguishable at times, I'm talking about a kind of pig, not a white South African. Suspect B, Artemis. Motive, revenge. Artemis was friends with an asexual hunter dude named Hippolytus, whose name means ended by horses, so we'll call him Mr. Hands. Mr. Hands worshipped her, and not Aphrodite. Aphrodite, being a messy bitch, got jealous, and cursed his stepmom, who was actually Theseus' second wife, to love him. She was so in love with Hippolytus that she got ill and wanted to kill herself. The nurse tried to save her by asking Mr. Hands to help her. But Mr. Hands was not a fan of this porn category, or any porn category for that matter. So the stepmom, Antiope or Hippolyta, we aren't sure, decided to kill herself and left a suicide note where she was like, "Hey Theseus, hubby, your son raped me. Yeah, that's why I'm killing myself," to try to hide her tracks. There are other versions where she commits suicide later in the story or doesn't at all, but they don't make much sense, so we'll stick with this one, where she tells Theseus after killing herself. Theseus' dad, Poseidon, had given him 3 wishes in the past, so Theseus used one of his 3 genie wishes to ask Poseidon to kill Mr. Hands. His own son, by the way, who I guess Theseus thought was randomly the only male follower of Artemis. So Poseidon sends a sea monster, which scares Mr. Hands' horses, who then freak out, throw him outside of the chariot, and then dragged him to death with a really bad case of rug burn. But right before one Hippolytus Hands died, Artemis promised him that she'd make a cult for him and clear his name. But anyways, yeah, that's why Artemis could have been pissed off at Aphrodite. Suspect C. Apollo. Motive. Revenge. Apollo had a son, Eurymanthus, who accidentally saw Aphrodite bathing with Adonis after they had sex. Aphrodite was not happy and blinded him, naturally making Apollo mad. Vote in the comments below who you think sent the boar. But yeah, all this is to say that Aphrodite and Persephone had a grudge on each other since Adonis, which is why Persephone filled the golden box with toxic smoke instead of cream. By this point, Eros was fully healed, which, by the way, what took him so long? It's just a little bit of wax. Maybe he had mental health issues? But like, dude, get over it. Anyways, he did, and went to find his love. When he found her, he shot her gently. Apparently, he's Hawkeye, and his arrows can do more than affect people's emotions, because he got her awake. So, Eros went to Zeus for help, and Zeus was like, "Alright, I'll make her immortal if you scratch my back next time I need to rape a baddie." So an assembly was called, and Psyche was given some ambrosia to make her immortal, and they had a big feast, where Zeus warned Aphrodite to not mess with Psyche. Psyche became the goddess of the soul, and was finally able to give birth to their daughter Hedon, the goddess of pleasure and orgasms. And yeah, happily ever after. Genuinely a good ending, which is rare in Greek mythology.